Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern14.com here. Somehow we did not smash computers, and we are here to talk basketball. Let's acknowledge we've had some occasional video and audio difficulties that we are working on. Just if you watch us regularly, we are aware of this. We're trying to fix it. God help us with that. But let's quit all the tech talk. Let's talk basketball. That's why we're here. We can make a little fun of ourselves, especially me, because I made fun of the slate of games from Tuesday night in the SEC, which going in did not appear to be the best of slates, and that was one of the more intriguing nights of basketball. You really had three games go down to the last second, one of which went into overtime, and a night of basketball that delivered way beyond our expectations. Let's start in Lexington with, I thought, the most intriguing game of the night. Mississippi State and Kentucky was a really good game. You had the stars for both teams who took over. Oscar Tshiebwe for Kentucky, who pulled a 2020. Iverson Molinar, who really showed out last night. Kentucky wins that one in overtime, but just a very, very entertaining game and well played on both sides.
Yeah, no, it was a good game, and I mean, I think every fan base would probably agree with any of the three could have been, considered the best game. I mean, I think that certainly there was one other that had that argument, but I mean, I said going in, I thought this would be an interesting slate, probably more interesting than meets the eye, and we'll get to that in a second with the other two teams, but this one. We talked about it, didn't we? I mean, we said, I don't care what the circumstances are, Mississippi State is just not a team that's getting blown out this year. And they're just a team that is in every single game they play in. And this was another case of that, where at one point you thought they could get blown out, right? But it just wasn't going to happen. And I think that can be a frustrating thing. That can be a good thing if you're a Mississippi State fan, is you're never kind of to that point where, you just feel like you're just completely out of a game, but you're also so close in several of these instances like this one, where it's like, if we just did this or that, we're able to win, and maybe our season looks a little bit different. But I mean, this was kind of one of those huge opportunities. I thought Mississippi State would play well, just given the matchup and just how these teams play. But, we said this too going in. I mean, they've got arguably the second best player on the floor behind Oscar Tshiebwe. Is Iverson Molinar was the second. I just think that was the case going into the game, and that's how it turned out. As this guy just went off and scored 30 and put him on his back. And sometimes you need that, right? I mean, just ask one of these other teams we're about to get to. Sometimes you just need a player to put you on their back and to give you a chance, and that's what Mississippi State did. But at the end of the day, it's the same old story. Who is going to do anything with Oscar Tshiebwe? And when you're Mississippi State, you don't have Toulouse Smith in there, your options become limited. And, it's just, Tshiebwe is the best player in the league. He's the player of the year. Barring an injury, nothing's going to change that at this point. And that's not taking any away from Jabari Smith, who we'll get to again in a second. But it's just, this guy is on another level from everyone else. And, I mean, without him, this team is so much different. And that's, again, not a knock on Grady or Wheeler or Washington. It's just, he is exactly what they need. And again, I mean, he did everything. It's like, you can't teach what he can do. Like, he has the awareness. I said to someone this morning, I realize it's going to sound crazy, but he has Dennis Rodman-esque instincts of where the basketball is.
Good call. Yeah.
Like, it's just, there's no one I've seen like that in a long time. Like, and that's just fair, unfair. Like, he has the type of instincts that you just cannot teach. And it's such a valuable thing. And I think that's going to be a reason why Kentucky not only, is going to compete for the league title with Auburn, but they're going to have a chance to make a Final Four this year. And it's because of him, as I just don't see anyone else out there in the country that can do what he can do. So
the other thing I noticed about him on Tuesday, Blake, he is so good, not just at sealing his guy off when he gets a pass in the post, but his reaction time from when the ball hits his hands to time that he turns and spins. I think that's one thing that separates him. I think for most players, there's a little bit of a delay when you catch the ball to make your next move. He seems to get from catching the ball to doing what he's going to do with it just a split second faster than everybody else.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like it's it's not just that he can do all these things. It's like he is just athletically. I mean, it's just a gift. Like this guy is just I mean, he's built. He's just got all those different things and he's got the speed, he's got the agility. Yeah, I mean like he's got it all. And I think it's just so fun to watch him and I know opposing fans don't, but I hope Kentucky fans appreciate him because he is a special player and again, I don't think we've seen a player like him. I'm not saying he's the best player to come through college basketball in, decades or anything, but like it's you don't see many players like him often. And I think that's the thing is like he just is he's special and there's no other way to
Yeah.
put it. And I just think that his ability to impact the game is unlike anyone else in the SEC and quite frankly, probably, not on every I mean, you obviously you can find someone on every single team that's like, well, if you take that player off the floor, completely different, but just the way he does it is
Yeah.
yeah, it's something, especially at this high of a level, right? Like
Yeah.
and again, that's not knocking anybody in the mid-major, low major, but to do this at this level in the SEC and to have multiple 15 plus rebounding type games and just to dominate the way that he has, it's pretty remarkable. So
I was thinking last night. Well, first of all, I don't think there really is a comp for Sheboy. I mean, you mentioned Dennis Rodman. They were kind of different type players. Rodman was a little springier and bouncier, maybe not quite as tall. I don't think Rodman was as polished an offensive player either. So I don't even know who the best style comparison is, but that's as good as I can think of because of the special rebounding skills. But I left last night thinking, to me, and maybe I'll look over this week and change my mind, but it seems like you've got a clear top 5 players in this league. You've got Sheboy and Ty Washington of Kentucky. You've got Smith and Kessler at Auburn. And I think Molinar, who we had in that group anyway, really solidified his case in that group. I think I left the game, well, no doubt I did, with a bigger appreciation for him than I had coming in. And I had a high opinion of him coming in.
yeah, those are top 5. I mean, I think that's the way, again, you just take those 5 players and you're like, well, it's hard to find another group. I'd take that 5 against, any other 5 in any league in the country and feel pretty
Yeah.
good about my chances. Give me Tari Eason as a 6th man and I'm set. Like I got everything I need, probably to really have a pretty special team. So yeah, I mean, it's a man. It's just yeah. I don't know what else you can say about Sheboy. He's something, and yeah, he's going to give Kentucky a really good chance to have a special finish to their season. I think just based on how he plays. So
Iverson Molinar is just so smooth with the ball. He almost looks like he's playing on ice skates. And I'm not going to compare him to these guys yet, but it's like when I watched Darius Garland at Vanderbilt, just the way that he moved with the ball and was so efficient with his movements and so good and so fast with the dribble, it kind of reminded me a little bit of him.
yeah, I mean, he doesn't get enough credit. We've always said that, and that's not his fault. It's part of Mississippi State just kind of being like we said, what they are. I mean, they're that team that you feel like is on the verge, but they're on the verge, right? Like they're
Yeah.
not there, and they're not maybe to the level that you think they should be at this point. And still, though, I have a hard time believing they're not going to have a chance to be right there, because they've got to win some of these games. Obviously, they beat Alabama, but that win's becoming less impressive by the week.
Yeah.
And Arkansas when that's looking good. You're rooting for Arkansas to be much better, and they'll get another chance at Arkansas again here in about a week and a half or so. But they just got to start finding good wins because again losing games, no matter if it's to good teams at a certain point, it's not that's only going to do so much for you. You've got to win some of these and. They'll get their chances. I mean, Texas Tech. We'll talk about the SEC Big 12 Challenge tomorrow, but it's like it's a big opportunity, and so will the Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU, Bama. Again, they've got some opportunities, and with Molinar on the floor, they'll have some chances to win those games.
Yeah, and I guess the bad news: Tennessee at home, LSU, Alabama on the road. They do have a home game with Auburn. That would really move the needle. An away game with A&M. So, like you said, chances. They're 44 is state this morning in the net rankings. A couple more things before we move on to some other games. And these are all Kentucky related. I thought Kellen Grady was really good for them last night when it mattered. The league does not have just a lot of pure spot-up, elite knockdown shooters. He's the best hands down, and I don't think there's a close second. I mean, Jabari Smith can do that at times, but he's a little bit of a different type of player for many reasons. So there was that. The other thing is the health thing. I mean, it seems like you can't watch Kentucky for 10 minutes anymore without somebody going down. And Washington didn't play last night. And then they lose Jacob Toppin late in the game with an ankle injury. I don't know how significant that is, but every time you watch a game as a Kentucky fan right now, you're almost holding your breath.
Yeah, and those are the kind of things. I mean, you just can't. Like, that's just a season. I mean, I think sometimes those things just happen, and yeah, there's no way to predict it, and I think you just have to, you kind of understand that's part of the game at this point. Is you're going to have some of these injuries, and it's just how do you get through them? And I think for Kentucky, they're just one of those teams that's had a lot of close calls at times, and and you just, like we said, I mean, at full strength, obviously Kentucky's right there with Auburn, at the top of the SEC, and certainly has a chance to make the Final Four. But like with most teams, if you take one player out of the equation, it can change things dramatically. And luckily for Kentucky, they got a lot of good players around, Washington. And so you're able to kind of make up for some of that, and especially just find a way to win a game like this. So I think that's just part of the grind of the season, and you're going to have injuries and that kind of stuff. So there's no way to, I don't think you just sit back and just be in fear all the time of thinking, okay, what happens next? Because it's just, it's just kind of one of those things, I think, with just the game itself. So
Auburn, Missouri was close start to finish. Actually, it wasn't at the start. I think Missouri ran out 12-2. And Auburn, I think, never led by more than 4 points. Yeah, that's correct. I've got it. Missouri did lead by 10. That was the biggest lead, the 12-2. Really, for Auburn, I don't think it's not that anybody's suggesting it was a panic moment, but I just watched the game, and I'm just like, all this is they're not hitting shots. Jabari Smith was, 2 of 15? Kessler and K.D. Johnson were the guys that were hitting baskets. Everybody else just couldn't throw it in the ocean for whatever reason.
Auburn fans going to be honest for not leading with the number one team in the country. They're going to be saying, "Why are you leading with Kentucky?"
we have been the Auburn channel for about a week now. But
listen, we've given Auburn a lot of credit here recently. Although there was someone, I think, that asked, that went all the way back to our power rankings from November, and I think asked why we had Auburn third or something. Wow, yeah.
You didn't know. I mean, there are so many, and this is what we said preseason. There's so many good players in this league. And you don't know which 5-star freshmen are going to pop, which ones, and especially bigs, right? I mean, 5-star guards come in, and more often than not, it works really well with bigs. You just never know what the time horizon is, and the difference is Smith is a different type of big. But yeah, I mean, it's fun to see how it's playing out. We just didn't know at first, right?
Well, I want to point out, I was higher on Auburn than a lot of people were.
You were.
I said going into the season, I thought Auburn could be 1 or 2 in the SEC, and I don't think a lot of people were saying that. So I do want to point that out. But yes, ultimately we said, all right, maybe it's Kentucky at the top, maybe Bama's right there having a good shot, although that hasn't turned out well, and we'll talk about that in a second. But it's like, you could see the pieces in place for Auburn, and anyone that couldn't, I mean, I just think you were ignoring the possibilities with this team. But look, I said this going into this game. I didn't pick Missouri to win this game because it's like, I wasn't going to do that. But if you're looking for the ultimate letdown and potential trap game, this was it, because it had every ingredient you could ask for in a letdown trap game. You're coming off the biggest game of the season, biggest game in program's history in a long time, against Kentucky, all the emotional high of that. And then for 2 straight days, 3 straight days, all you hear is how you are the best team in the country. You're number one. You finally got there. Let's look at this as sort of a retrospective on the rise of the Auburn program, right? And we talked a lot about this, but that is something that everyone hears. This is the social media era. Everyone hears that. And then on top of that, what happens? You go and play a Missouri team that, aside from a absolute stinker at Arkansas, this team has played a lot better over the past month or so. They have gotten much better. They play much better at home, as we pointed out. And defensively, they may not be great offensively. That statistically, defensively, they may not be great. But if it's Conzo Martin on the other side, I don't care what anyone says about him. He is a really good defensive coach, and he is a really good. Bruce Pearl said it last night after the game. One of the best at game planning and the strategic stuff. Now, maybe that doesn't always work out, but last night it worked out. They had the perfect game plan. They forced Auburn into situations they didn't want to be in, and that's why this was such a close call. Mm-hmm. And I mean, look, again, it's like, everything came together for this to be a close game. And I think it was just one of those that if you looked at it, if you thought that Auburn was going to have the same sort of performance in this game as they did against Kentucky, I never expected that, because this is on the road. It's at a tough environment. Even if it's a team that has had their struggles this season, it is a team that is playing a lot better right now. And I just thought this was going to be a grind, and I didn't think it was going to be this much of a grind. But, man, it was a grind, and we're talking 1 or 2 plays go the different way. And by the way, that's where the discussion comes in of the end of that game.
The last play.
I just don't know why, and look, there's a reason I'm sitting here and not on the sidelines, but it's like there were points. When 1 minute left, I'm thinking Missouri might win this, right? And I'm thinking they got the momentum. Until Katie Johnson hits a couple shots that were just, give him credit. I mean, he had to hit them, and somebody had to take over. But I just don't know why you don't try to extend the game there, because Auburn is on their heels. All the pressure's on them. And I think in any scenario, if Auburn takes a shot with 1 second left on the shot clock, at best you've got 4 or 5 seconds, and you have no timeouts, right? So, and even if you did have a timeout, you're not a good 3-point shooting team, are you? So it's like, you've got to somehow. I just didn't like that part of it, and I thought Missouri could have given themselves a better chance to extend that game, just based on, I thought Auburn was on its heels and was reeling, and then Missouri just kind of gave them an opportunity to get out of that. And once again, who was the factor here? Walker Kessler. He keeps the ball alive on that last play, and that was the difference. So
yeah, and I think that's one thing. It's easy to think of this in hindsight, but immediately when that was over, the first thing I was thinking of is, okay, when you have a 4-second differential between the shot clock and the game clock, and you think about playing it out that way, you've got to consider rebounding. Auburn's pretty good on the offensive glass. They've got Kessler. They've got Jabari Smith.
They had 25 offensive rebounds.
Yeah, how did you – I mean, look, hats off to Conzo Martin for getting a team that just got destroyed in November, December, to be together, stay together, be in a game like that. He deserves credit for having his team prepared. But that was one that as soon as it was over, everybody was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, it's like the perfect game plan up until the last part. And I think it's like that's just – I'm sure it's frustrating for Missouri fans because, again, when – who was it? I guess Pickett hits that 3, and that made it whatever it was. And, I'm thinking – man, if I'm honestly thinking in my mind, I'm like, if Missouri gets a stop here or, whatever happens, if they get the ball back, I think they're going to win this thing, because you felt like all the momentum, even though Auburn was up 4 with 40-some seconds left. I'm just thinking if Missouri hits a shot here, has a chance to win it, you just felt like it was all set up for that, just based on how Auburn had been playing. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I thought this was, there's no other way to put it. This was an escape. This was and Bruce Pearl, said it too. It's like survive in advance. That's exactly what this was, because there was very little reason, for Auburn to feel like that they should have won this game, minus the offensive rebounding, which Devin Cambridge, I mean, my goodness, 9 offensive rebounds. And it's like, I just kept thinking, and that's what I think, I knew someone's going to bring this up, but Katie Johnson, he took that shot in there, one of those ones with a couple minutes left, and it's like, was it a force? Absolutely. But you know what? I kept thinking, we had that shot selection discussion, and I'm like, maybe that goes into it, but at the same time, I didn't see anybody else stepping up to
No.
kind of be
No,
able to put
Blake,
themselves.
nobody was hitting shots. All they had
Right.
was Kessler at point blank range.
Yeah.
Wendell Green was off. Jabari Smith couldn't throw it in the ocean.
No. So
Flanagan was not having
point,
a good game.
your best chance is to throw the ball off the backboard and let someone get it, right? Like, even if it's a bad shot, just hit the
Yeah.
backboard and somebody will get a hand on it probably. So I think that was like, again, I know that's probably part of the bigger discussion, but I just think that you have to have guards that can do that sometimes, where maybe they do force some shots, but in a game like that, you needed somebody to force something, because otherwise everything was in Missouri's favor in terms of just how the game was playing out and the style. So yeah, I mean, Katie Johnson, it was a good night for current and former Georgia players, wouldn't you say? So
Yeah, I think it was. And he kind of gets credited as the heart of the team. I think they have a few of those, man. You see the way Kessler plays. You see the way Wendell Green plays. Jabari Smith is kind of like the calm one of the group, but they just have so many energy guys. And
Katie
that really
Johnson is not calm.
No, he's what was the Tyler Hansbrough name? Psycho T. I mean, we need to come up with one for
Damian Fishback said that someone had called him a psychopath, or he said he talked to an Auburn fan or something, and they said he's a psychopath on the floor, but then they're like, he's our psychopath though. It's like, well, there you go, that's true. So
he's like a shooting guard in a linebacker's body too.
Oh yeah, he's a ball of energy, and again, that's what they needed in this game. If they didn't have that, they're not winning this game.
Yeah.
And they got lucky they did. So I'm with you. Give Missouri credit. I know it's frustrating, and maybe that doesn't change anything about Conzo Martin's future or something, but I think this is a team that, record aside, has been playing a lot better over the past month or so, and I think that's where, late in the season, when you got a team maybe like Mississippi State or Arkansas that are looking for wins to get in the NCAA tournament, perhaps this is probably not the type of team I want to play, because I think they're only going to get better for here. And I mean, look, they've got Florida, A&M, Arkansas, Mississippi State back-to-back because of the makeup. Like those,
they will get one of those teams, Blake.
And that's the thing, and it's like, because that's gonna hurt one of those teams from an NCAA tournament standpoint. So I think this is not a team I want to be playing over this next month or so, because I think that they figured some things out. So,
and by the way, after the game, you could tell Bruce Pearl just knew it was one of those nights. He said, Jabari Smith has been tremendous in every game we've had, but this one, like, if he felt like there was something off about that team or whatever, he would have been pretty ticked off. He was just of the mind that, I don't know if you'd say they stole one, but it wasn't their night, and they lived to tell it. And he ends the night just beaming, because that's just basketball. Sometimes you just have one of those nights.
Well, I was going to say, like, let's say they lose that game. Like, that's college basketball, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I mean, that's why we enjoy the sport the way we do, is like, it's a long season. The elements always come into play. The home court advantage, we've talked about that so many times. Yeah, like it happens sometimes. And like I said, going in, I did not pick up Missouri to win, but like I said, man, this is a tricky game, because you're coming off such a high, and you got to turn around, and all you've heard is you're the best team in the world. And it's like, you've got a Missouri team on the other side that hears all that too. And they hear about how they're just kind of a team that's standing there in the way, and they're just, gonna be sitting here just standing back and letting Auburn do what they want. That's not a Conzo Martin team. And so, yeah, nice win for Auburn. It wasn't pretty, but you'll take them any way you can get them, and you got to win games like that. To kind of, you're going to have games like that, and I think for them to win it is, that was exhale and move on to the next. So,
okay, Alabama fans, I'll take the blame for you. I was on Drew DeArmond's show in Huntsville yesterday morning and asked about that game, and I said, it would be the most Alabama thing ever to lose to Georgia and then to win your SEC Big 12 challenge game, which is who, Baylor?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
step one is in the books.
Look, again, like we talked about this game, and what have we said about Georgia? over the past
The
couple weeks.
same thing we've said about Missouri. Yeah.
It's like the record, I know what it is, but it's a little bit deceiving because Georgia is not necessarily as bad as their record shows. And we said it, they're a much better offensive team than defensive team. And if Alabama's not hitting shots, things become interesting. And again, I would have never expected Georgia to win this game, but the signs have been there. Minus, like we said, I mean, you can look at the score and they're probably thinking, okay, I haven't watched Georgia play. If I look at 4 of Georgia's last 5 games leading into that one, they lose to Kentucky by 15, Mississippi State by 16, Auburn by 23, South Carolina by 17. But it's crazy to think that like some of those games were a lot closer than the actual score line suggested.
Yeah.
And you've actually seen Georgia get a little bit better. And it's like, it was a perfect storm. Like, it's just an Alabama team that, quite frankly, is the most inconsistent team in the league right now. Minus the teams at the bottom, but it's like,
no, I think they're more in the range of performance for them.
Right.
Look, they have beaten Gonzaga in Houston, 2 of the best 5 teams in the country probably, and they've lost now to Georgia and Iona.
Well, and Missouri.
Missouri.
Well, but like
them too.
Again, it's just, I don't even know what to say because I still think even 20 games in or 19 games in before this one, there was too much of a thought that somehow this Alabama team was going to miraculously become the Alabama team of last year.
Yeah.
And we said it. I told someone that earlier this week. I was like, if that's your expectation, I don't think that's a good expectation to have because they're not that team. They're just a different team, and we're seeing it. For all the things we talked about over the past 2-3 years with Alabama's basketball program, there was one common thread in there, and that was Herbert Jones and the things that he could do on the floor that just, made things so much easier for them on defense, especially. And it's like when you remove that, you got some great offensive players coming back, but they have not been able to figure out that they don't have that guy that holds them together on defense right now. And that's allowing way too many of these opportunities to kind of slip through. And like we said, quite frankly, for the most part, like they should have lost to Missouri, right? Like again, they needed a miraculous rally. But that's what you just said, right? Like there's such a wide range with Alabama that it's like, they can do that. And maybe in the back of their mind, they're thinking, oh yeah, we can score 30 points in 10 minutes. We don't have to play defense. Like we'll be fine. But sometimes it's not. Like you can't do that sometimes. And I can imagine the frustration with Alabama fans. Because this isn't, it 100% is. And I'm sure there's just a lot of frustration at a lot of different people. And let's just say we've said all this to say this. There's no reason you should lose that game at Georgia. There's no reason you should lose that game. I can say all I want about Georgia's probably getting better. They're still a bad team, and there's no way Alabama should lose. And it's just like there's so much disappointment with that to where, it looks like a team to me that just does not have the chemistry.
No,
they don't have the cohesiveness that they've had the last couple of years. And like I said, they don't have that one guy that is able to just bring everything together and just kind of put it all where it needs to be for them to be successful. And I think that's why you've just got such a wide range of outcomes with this team. And that is frustrating, I know, for Alabama fans.
Well, and one other thing, I was texting a couple people about that game, and I said, boy, they miss Herb Jones. And someone brought up, they miss John Petty, too.
Oh,
That's 2 guys that have been in the program 4 years and played huge roles. You don't get 4-year stars often, and Alabama had a couple of them. So that helped. The only thing I can say good is Jaden Shackelford is playing really well lately and kind of gave them a chance, but it didn't happen. Let's talk Georgia for just a minute because I don't think we ever talk about them. There just hasn't been much there. You watch them individually. Sometimes they're a little better than maybe I've given them credit for. Braylon Bridges has had a really nice year. Noah Ballman has been a scorer for them at times. Kario Akendo has had almost some 30-point games. And then there's Aaron Cook, who's got maybe the strangest career path other than Peyton Willis in college basketball history. I mean, how many guys go from Southern Illinois to Gonzaga to Georgia? I can't quite figure the trajectory there, but Georgia played last night, and we talked about the defensive issues, but Alabama gave them enough opportunities, and they cashed in.
Yeah, I mean, something too Georgia's done this year is they've got to the free throw line, and
yeah,
they did that last night. I mean, they got there, and they didn't just get there, right? Like, they took advantage of the opportunities there, and that's another frustration probably for Alabama. It's like this just is a bad free throw shooting team at times, and they only got 13 to 20 last night, and obviously there's the difference in the game. There's 7 points that are on the board, but it's like I don't know what the future looks like for Georgia. It's funny because even yesterday I said there's probably a realistic chance Georgia's 2-16 in the league this year. And you look at their schedule the rest of the way, and you're like, there's an opportunity against South Carolina, there's an opportunity against Ole Miss, even the one at Missouri. At this point, I don't like that opportunity either because Missouri's playing so much better. But it's like going to that game last night, there were probably 2 wins you could find the rest of the way. Well, at least this changes the expectation maybe a little bit is to win a game like this, and what can that do for you? And it is strange to think about with Georgia. It's like they beat Alabama, now they beat Memphis, who's been disappointing, but I mean, they can do that. Like, they can win some of these games. They haven't done it enough. And they had some close calls too, as we said. I mean, they could have beat Vanderbilt at home. A couple things go their way. Same thing with A&M and that game against East Tennessee State back in December. But I still don't know, what the expectation is. I don't know if that changes anything for Tom Crean. This is still going to be a team that I think is going to struggle, like I said, to find 3 or 4 wins in the league. But you never know how one of these games can sort of change the trajectory of your season. I don't think it's going to push Georgia into the top half or anything like that. But, they got Vanderbilt next, right? So it's like there's an opportunity, that Vanderbilt's not a world beater by any means at this point. So maybe you have a chance to have a little streak going here, and you build off of that game against Alabama. We'll see. But, give Georgia credit. They outplayed Alabama. And I think that's probably the best way to put it. So
if you'd asked me this time yesterday, I would have put the over-under on the length of time we would have spent talking about those 3 games. Probably 13 minutes, maybe 12. We got almost 33 out of it. That's pretty good.
Yeah, well, a lot of noteworthy action coming out of those 3 games, and you never know in this league. That's the thing, is you never know with some of these games, and so we'll see. Hopefully, maybe that'll be the case again on Wednesday. There's some interesting ones, and obviously we've got our predictions video up on that, so check that out as well.
Any other loose ends to tie up here?
No, and just for everyone's reference, our subscribers and people who watch, we're going to have a pretty loaded SEC Big 12 Challenge preview coming up here over the next several days. We're going to do some individual stuff for the bigger games, like an Alabama, Baylor, like a Kentucky, Kansas, Auburn, Oklahoma, and such. I think Tennessee, Texas is another one we're going to do. So we're going to kind of separate some of those bigger games, I guess you could say. But we'll also have our usual predictions for every game and previews for all those for the entire SEC Big 12 Challenge. And, of course, hey, we've got those 2 SEC games, too, on Saturday.
Yep.
I don't know how much attention there's going to be on those 2. But, so we'll have that on the channel, too. So, be sure to hit that subscribe button.
Yeah, that helps us a lot. We're not just 2 guys who sit around and talk about it. These are our jobs. And help us by subscribing, tell some friends, and if you're interested in advertising, that's a conversation we can have too. Anyway, he's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We got a ton more video content coming up. And oh, by the way, if you're a baseball fan, we're probably going to start that next week. So anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.